Welcome to Bachelor,
a podcast so educational it could be a university class.
With your hosts,
Danielle Dick McHugh,
Kim Hannah,
and Bill Henninger.
Welcome to Bachelor. We are so excited. It is August. Bill looks like he's gotten some sun. Have you gotten some sun, Bill?
You know, I have, but also there's like some filter you can put on here and it said like touch up my look. And I turned it all the way up and it's like, it really should have read like make me blotchy and red like a drunk.
I don't think that you look blotchy and red. I just think you look like suntan to go with your Hawaiian shirt. For those of you that are just listening, he's rocking some summertime gear here.
Yeah. Elaine dresses me like a Ken doll and she bought me this awesome Hawaiian shirt. So
yeah. August is a time of mourning.
It is.
For all in education, but at Bachelor we're still in good spirits.
We try. Yeah.
We tried. So before we jump into this week's episode, I got a question for you, Bill.
Okay.
If you were a food, what kind of food would you be?
That's a really good question. Because it's not your favorite food.
No.
So it's like a food that describes your personality.
Absolutely.
Or like your overall look. Because like overall look, I would say like mashed potatoes. I feel like I'm just mashed potato-y.
Whatever.
But I feel like personality wise, I got a little more pep than that. I'm gonna say spring roll.
Oh, a spring roll. We made spring rolls last week.
I love them. So they double as that, but also it's like I got a lot going on. You know, I feel like I'm fun. I'm not too much, but I could be a dinner if you needed me to.
Are you like, like spring rolls are kind of translucent, like
yeah, I don't think people
emotions on your sleeve.
Yeah, I don't think people feel like they have to guess much about me. I think it's like you kind of what you get is what you get.
Transparent, Bill.
You can put meat in them. They can be vegetarian. I can do a lot. I got range. I got range, Danielle.
Range. So I think I'm kombucha.
Oh,
because
really?
It's unique.
Uh-huh.
It's got a good fizz to it. I'm a little fizzy.
Uh-huh.
I'm a little loud. Some people maybe don't like that.
I think everyone loves it.
If you acquire the taste, I sit well in your belly afterwards.
You can really help. Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It makes you poop. I talk about poop. Like, there's like.
Here's my concern with that. I didn't realize drinks were involved. You said a food.
Oh,
I just don't know.
Sorry.
Food. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I really like that was a very good metaphor. You thought that one out.
Except for I answered the wrong question. That's all right.
That's a very academic move.
That is.
Let me tell you the question you need to ask.
Absolutely. This is Bachelor. We keep the tropes alive.
For anyone listening who hasn't been in a meeting with academics, there is never a question that goes answered, but there are a lot of questions that weren't asked that get answered in long soliloquies.
So good. All right, so we'll jump into this week's episode. I'm
going to start calling this the not so 2-minute recap.
Not so 2-minute recap. Well, okay, so really quickly, how would you just rate this episode in terms of excitement?
I enjoyed it. You seem to not enjoy it, but I think we've all come to the conclusion that I have a dark, cold heart and I love watching like train wrecks.
Well, so I liked the week before a lot. So episode 3 of this season, I was like super into it. So I don't know if some of it is I watched at home by myself this week instead of with the pod. So maybe that's some of it. But I thought it was kind of boring in comparison. But
it wasn't well paced, is the way I would say. Like, I think the really good episodes, you've got good pacing throughout, where this one was very like nothing happening, everything's happening. So
I would agree. So it begins by foreshadowing troubles with Hayden. Hayden claims that Gabby called herself rough around the edges first, and so it was fair game for him to say the same. This man is an idiot. Bill, I'm sure you agree.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, good. We're on the same page. So they find out that they're going to Paris, and I guess that they're staying on a cruise ship too once they arrive. Okay, so I was really confused at first. I was like, are they making them ride a boat to Europe? I was like
transatlantic.
Holy crap, what has happened to their budget? Like, and then it all made more sense to me later.
So there are a few things that I have a hard stop on. I will not go on a cruise.
Why not?
They scare the bejeebers out of me. Couple reasons. Watch a lot of Dateline. People always getting killed. They are always getting killed. Every other Dateline is somebody getting shoved off. Two, I can swim for like forever, but I'm not even dumb enough to tell myself that I could, like, if the boat went down Titanic style, I could swim. And it's not the dying, it's the like having to tread water until I die. Yeah. So I have no interest.
So I have not been on a cruise since I was like a kid. We went on like a Disney cruise when
Oh God, that's even worse. Before you die, you see kids everywhere.
So I haven't been on one since then, but like I feel like one, I kind of want to go on an Alaska cruise. Like that's a bucket list for me. And then I would kind of like to go on a Disney cruise with my kids at some point. But as an adult, I'm really worried about seasickness. Like, and I don't know if I want to be like drugged up on Dramamine like the entire time. And two, it's close quarters. And I don't know how much I enjoy that.
I would do the Viking River ones where they like take you down the river and you're like constantly getting off to Portage.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do.
That would be cool. I mean, I remember.
Apparently there's one on the Mississippi now.
Oh yeah.
That sounds horrible. It's like next we're gonna get off at Keokuk.
I have a really good story about that sometime, but okay. This 2-minute recap. I gotta get to it.
Go.
So there's a cruise. We aren't fans of cruises, is I think what we have agreed upon. So once they arrive, they immediately sort of get one-on-ones, and we learn that Gabby's gonna go on a one-on-one with Jason, and Rachel is going to go on a one-on-one with Tino. Jason was a little bit of a surprise, Tino not so much. So then they go on their one-on-ones and they make crepes and they try on berets, and Americans again are assholes at the way that we stereotype other countries. There's like two things that we know about this country, and we will create ridiculous dates around them. The dates seem to be going along well enough. Then they bring Rachel and Gabby kind of together in the middle of them so that they can swoon. And then they move on to the serious evening portion of the dates. Tino and Rachel have a really serious conversation about their career and family goals. Tino seems kind of relieved that Gabby does want kids. Rachel does want kids. Rachel tells some like horrifying stories about men being real jerks about her career as a pilot. Yes. So I guess if you're a pilot, you are incapable of fidelity and raising a family in a healthy way. So, but it seems like they're on the same page. I think that Rachel is ready to marry Tino. I think they're both boring, so go for it. Gabby and Jason.
Boring life with your boring kids and your boring house.
I'll call them.
You know who doesn't
DJ
talk?
And Nicole.
You know who doesn't talk about poop? Tino and Rachel.
That's true. They don't talk. I bet Rachel's too classy.
You know who's not kombucha? Tino and Nicole.
Yes. Oh my goodness, it's so good. So Gabby and Jason seem to connect over, they have kind of difficult childhoods and they both have an appreciation for therapy. I was reading I like to read the different recaps that people put out.
Yes.
And one was like, this is the like hot for therapy trope, which I thought was like really funny. another one kind of said that Gabby's horny for therapy. And so all of these things kind of made me laugh. So both men get roses on the one-on-ones, and then they move on to a group date, which is technically, I think, for Gabby, but they make it all about Rachel. And we get one of our Bachelor favorite tropes, which is a date where they physically fight for love. More about that later on. Gabby gives Spencer the rose. I thought that was all boring. Rachel feels ignored by her guys and really comes unraveled. Meanwhile, Logan is losing it because he realizes that he's really there for Gabby. And I talk about that. I don't really like Logan, but I also like kind of feel for the situation that he's gotten himself into. So I do feel like he's going to be our next villain. So Rachel then tells the guys they need to step it up. It's super awkward. So what did the producers do? Set up the next day's group date where she smells the guy's armpits. I will say the episode got a lot more exciting here. What is going on?
It started out with two French people like making out. And then if we're talking about stereotypes and tropes, let's just bring up that French people are not known for having like they're known for some body odor, right? Like there's a stereotype out there that
their pheromones natural.
Bathing is not held in the same bathing cycle as Americans. I feel like that's a fair way to put it, right? And then they're giving advice on smells, I guess. And I was like, I just don't know if I would be taking that advice. A lot of stuff I'd take advice from French people on. Not that one.
Like if I was going to go into this date, I would want a heads up that somebody's nose is going to be in my pit.
Right.
I think it is like unfair to like sneak a nose in there without like warning. Like, and Bill, maybe I'm jumping out of order here, but there's got to be some research though on like smell and attraction.
Yes. Yeah, there is. Yeah, so more attractive people tend to smell better, like controlled for other variables. So like when you do by like the classical symmetry and stuff like that. But then there's probably also local preferences, right? So like cultural preferences for what's an acceptable smell. So yeah. But yeah, more attractive people smell better. So they all probably all those guys smell pretty good. They did this before with a Bachelor, and I remember he described one of the women's clothes as smelling a bit sour. And I was like, oh, that feels yeah. And I feel like it's even worse if you do that.
You're like so bummed. You're like, oh man, I got some water in my suitcase on the cruise ship, and so now I smell like mildew, and they're smelling my armpit. I don't know.
Well, like with smelling the clothes, like when you have, you'll have something that like sits in the laundry a little too long.
Yeah.
And it gets that kind of like weird wet smelling. Like how bad would you feel if you brought it that day and you're like, oh no.
Or somebody's like, oh, that's some Axe body spray right there. Like,
Someone let a junior hire in here.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I just thought it was so bizarre and like really funny after this like emotional breakdown. Like, how we're gonna smooth things over? We're gonna smell armpits. Good Lord. Anyway, Tyler gets the rose and they connect over poetry, which is Bill's favorite. And then the cocktail party is all about Logan and Hayden, right? So Logan, what do I do? He's like clearly struggling with this. And then we have Hayden has this moment with Rachel where he tells her about his dog Rambo, right? Rambo?
Yes.
And it really kind of feels like he's trying to guilt Rachel into keeping him because he sacrificed so much to be there. Did you get that vibe?
Yeah, it did not play well in the watching pod.
Okay. he's a real
Oh,
character.
he's a tool bag, yeah.
He is a tool bag. And I like had this like dissonance though. I was like, someone who loves their pet so much, but also is such a tool bag. He's a real loser. And she ends up sending him home. And then we kind of have this drama over will Logan accept the rose.
Yep.
He ends up accepting it. He's in like such a bad position though, don't you feel?
Yes.
Because like he does not want to like I mean,
Uh-oh.
for him to reject
Yeah.
Rachel in that moment after everything that's going on, and then she's like had such a roller coaster and she's kind of struggling. And I think he's like kind enough to see that. But like she's also like the longer that he stays on, so that basically he can talk
Yeah.
to Gabby. And then like
Yeah, the
how does
move
he
right, yeah. The move right there is to pull Rachel aside and say, here's the deal. And if he really was like, I want to spend time with Gabby and I'm not that interested in Rachel, he would have done it then. But really, what he doesn't want to happen
go
is him
home?
to, yeah, he doesn't want to go home, right? And that's what he was doing, is he's like trying to find the right time that he can kind of work all this magic. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a mess.
Mhm.
And he's definitely going to be the next villain. And there's just like a part of me that goes, bro, you ain't making it with Gabby.
Yeah. Yep.
Like it's not going to happen.
Yes, I agree.
It's not going to happen. So like just bow out.
Yeah.
Just bow out, get your Instagram like energy drink deal and
Yep.
like be on your way.
Yeah. Get your influencer clout while you can, because now you're just losing it.
Yeah.
This set Hayden's Southern political career back at least 2 years. That guy's a Southern politician if I've ever seen one, like mommy, daddy money. I think that dog is not even his dog. I think it's his parents' dog, and it's like he kind of has a stake in it. And yeah, he took the poor
Oh,
dog's cancer duck. He's like, oh, we'll talk about this. All right.
well, yes, I had that. Yes.
Let's just do concept three.
Let's talk about concept 3, puppy love and Hayden.
I'm
I
hot
need
and bothered. Let's do it.
yes, let's talk about it. I was like, how can a person be such a jerk face but also love his dog so much? But you don't
Well,
believe, you think it's a farce. I mean, yeah, I kind of have these moments too where I was like, okay, why'd you take your dog's stuff?
right. His cancer duck. Yeah. I thought that was, yeah. Everyone that we were watching it with was like, why aren't you home with the dog then? And it's like, I can't imagine if one of my pets were that close to passing away that I would go on a show.
I think that what bothered me is
Mhm.
I would be okay. I like, if, a person has a child at home or a
Mhm.
job that they left at, like, they
Mhm.
maybe like lost their job
Mhm.
over or something like that, and they like want to share that
Right.
experience with the person because they want to sort of say, hey, like, this dog is important to me,
Mhm.
or, like, this important thing. But when they kind
Mhm.
of use it as a sting to hold it over their heads, like,
Mhm.
I made a really big sacrifice to be here. And so, like, I do feel like it's this like emotional
Right.
manipulation that, like, but like the thing is I think it backfires sometimes, and people are like, oh, I'm gonna let this person go home because if I
Mhm.
know that it's not them, I need to like release them to the thing that's important to them.
Right.
So it's like interesting to me because I don't think that he's the first person that I felt like the disclosure has been less about a connection and sharing, and it's
Mhm.
been more about sort of like a manipulation.
Yep. I agree.
Like it tends to backfire, I think.
Yeah,
Oh
I
my
agree. I just thought it was really, yeah, it
yeah.
wasn't for me, bro. I wasn't feeling it, bro.
So there's kind of two other things that I wanted to talk about. One, I meant to do some research on, and then I didn't have time. But we can. we're smart people. We can just talk about it on the fly.
I
So I
love
was
it.
really thinking about this like fighting for love and all of these like violent metaphors that we
Mhm.
have around romance. Like I was like thinking about songs too, and
Mhm.
how many songs that are like love songs are like about battles and
Right.
um and so
Isn't Survivor about that? Eye of the
probably
Tiger.
yeah.
Survivor. Bum bum bum.
Well, and I know that there's a lot it's been a while since I read it, but I have read a lot about like metaphors in like survivor of sexual assault,
Mm,
like different metaphors that they use in their narratives about their experience.
right.
Um and what's really interesting is like some of those same like metaphors I think like there's it's a really old article now that was like comparing those metaphors to actually like themes that you see in fairy tales actually,
Hmm.
right? That
Yeah.
like fairy tales like have like some similar like arcs to
Mm.
like narrative arcs to the like arcs that people will kind of share about their experiences or
If you all are just listening,
surviving
just so
and
you know, Danielle had made several arc motions. Yeah. Very nice.
for those of you that study storytelling, I was drawing the lovely like um
Rising action.
yes, rising action climax.
Yeah.
Like that little diagram that
Yeah.
you always see with that lesson.
Yep.
I was painting it with my hands.
It was very good.
Thank you, thank you. I'm just practicing for teaching this semester.
So here's what I think about the fighting for love thing is that I think it gets mixed up with the idea of working for love, which I think, or working for a relationship, which I think is really important for people to understand. And we've talked about like destiny beliefs and growth beliefs, and how destiny beliefs are this: you find the person you're in love with them, nothing ever gets in the way, which is really not true. And relationships that are built around those tend to last much less longer and they have much more problems. You have growth beliefs where it's this idea that you are going to work, you're going to run into obstacles, but both of you are committed. And so you continue to work through all those issues. When people are like, you fight for love, I think that's what they're trying to say. However, I think the idea of working together for love and fighting for love is two different things, because fighting suggests diametrically opposed things, and you fight and someone wins. And successful relationships, it's like you work together to build something that's better than what the two pieces were before.
And it's ongoing, right? Like where I think
Yeah.
the sort of like fight narrative suggests that like you have a battle and there's a winner and
Mhm.
there's a loser and then you're done, right? Like
Yeah.
we fought and we won and we live
Mhm.
happily ever after, right?
Yeah.
Kind of a
Yeah, kind of what you were saying with the fairy tales, and it's like a lot of times fairy tales, it's like, and they lived happily ever after, and it's like it really should be, and they had 2 days where they weren't stressed about finances, and then it came back, or they had 2 days before the water heater exploded, and then they had to figure out what they're gonna do with cold water for a week.
oh my gosh, that ain't that the truth. Our sink is clogged for the second time in a month.
Oh
And
man.
so we're gonna see a plumber again tomorrow. So we
Here's
are
my issue
starting,
with that date.
yes.
They said they were training s7e4, and s7e4 is a kickboxing thing, and they only let them punch each other. Don't tell me you're going to let dudes kick each other and then only have them like half-ass punch. I want kicks to the junk. I want a drop kick. I want a thrust kick. I want a spinning heel kick to the head. What's the point? What's the point of calling it if you're not letting them do it?
Because it sounds French. Savat is French.
Yeah, well, it's a
You know,
French kickboxing. Yeah, it's like their version of it.
I had read though that Jesse Palmer apparently speaks pretty good French, or at least he did on the episode. That people that are like trained in
It was pretty
French,
decent.
like they felt like it was pretty decent.
Well, he's Canadian. And I wonder if he lived, I don't know where in Canada, but there are parts where they speak French as their primary language. So
That's exciting. So, what did you think about um
the
I
inner
don't know
child
how I
there.
saw these things, but yeah, So we have like the inner child work. Um, what did you think about that moment, especially like as
So there's a lot of
you?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different types of therapy and they work to varying levels and they work for different people and I've heard about it and for some people it really works. Usually it works I think for people who have had trauma and they kind of go back and experience this trauma and then give themselves things, give their child their traumatized child, I say that in quotes because you know it's in your head but it's still very real for the people. They give that child what they need to move past those traumas, and
Yeah.
so in that way I think you know it's good, and I just think it's good for anyone to see somebody in a high status talking about how they go to therapy.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I agree with you with this like weird hot for therapy thing. And I think who is the Claire? I feel like Claire also had a real hard on for therapy where it was like you're gonna participate in therapy and I'm gonna make it happen. Like
Well, I think that what it does is like therapy is super helpful. And I was like, I actually was super grateful that Gabby sort of like recognized that there is
mhm,
sort of this bias or stereotype or something like where like that men especially like
mhm,
have a weird bias against therapy
mhm.
because it's like emotional or feelings or
Right, yeah.
something, right? And so I think like I like that she pointed out that he was breaking that stereotype
Yep.
and embracing it. But I also think that one, it's hard work,
Mhm.
and two, like it's not this like, oh, I went to therapy, so like let me skip through life now. And so like I do
Yeah.
think that like that sort of like fetishizing that word of like therapy is like it's only a solution if you keep
Yes.
working at it, and the work isn't always easy. So like um I guess I was just like thinking about that, but
I
also
agree with you.
like
I think people don't understand that like therapy is 45 minutes or whatever of like sitting with a therapist and then a whole week or 2 weeks or a month of doing the things you've talked about and then like going back and having to reconcile if you actually did a good job and what you have to change and how you're going to change it. And it is not something that you like go in and lay on a couch. You know, people think of like Freudian therapy where you talk about your dreams and your mom and then you leave and you have these like great big awesome like epiphanies
revelation.
about yourself and nothing's a problem and it's not like that, man. There's like rough
I
days.
left my trauma at therapy. It's
Yeah.
there now.
Yeah, no, it's like it's rough. You get anxiety about going, but I mean people who do it and do it thoroughly and work through and work on the things that they suggest, it's, you know, really good evidence that it's successful. But I think that's the problem sometimes with things like this is like you said, it fetishizes it, right? Like let's do
Well, if you
therapy.
want to be a counselor, you could go through you and I's counseling
Yes,
program.
yes. There is a wonderful counseling program in the Midwest, K-CREP accredited. Yeah.
Woohoo!
Woo.
So shout out there. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is kind of related to the fighting for love date, where Gabby's like, they're not paying attention to me. Like when I've seen some like really funny memes where like she's like, they're not even making eye contact with me. And like if like stage lighting and stuff, I bet they couldn't see her. I bet they just were getting a flash of light in their eyes, but she was like very, very hurt about this. And
Yeah, you know, I didn't think about that. They were on the opposite side of that cage. I don't know how they could make eye contact.
well, so I kind of have this question like, do you think that Gabby and Rachel are particularly like fragile or like sensitive, or is there something going on, especially with the two that with there being two bachelorettes this season? Because I think that I thought that some of what was happening is that Gabby's men were doing a great job, like when they got the microphone and they
Mhm.
got to say things about her. Um, and I think that what it was doing is hearing them declare their feelings for Gabby and doing it really well. Also, like jumbled up some insecurities in Nicole, where like if they were just going on this experience completely on their own, right? Like, I don't know, you couldn't compare, like, oh, well, then so maybe she's going, I haven't heard those same sorts of things from the men.
Right.
And then like you start questioning yourself. And so like there's ways that I feel like both Gabby and Rachel are like coming across as like more fragile than
Mm-hmm.
maybe some of the other leads. But like I wonder how much of it is just they're also experiencing sort of different pressures and there's just more things to trigger insecurities.
Like a comparison effect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's not like, that's common even with like real relationships, right?
Yeah.
Like people who are in real ones where you go on a double date and like they're really lovey and you're like, oh, why aren't we like that? Or like, oh, I'm glad we don't bicker in that way. And so it's like I don't think that's uncommon. I think the differences are, one, that it's broadcast, right, on TV. Two, Elaine and I, we had to go up to Rochester and we drove back and we listened to the Bachelor Happy Hour podcast with
Yeah.
Michelle and Rebecca. And they had Gabby and Rachel on there and they were talking about it. And they were just saying, like, it's like, you're tired. You've been up for forever. She's like, you have a great date and then you have a bad date. And so it's like, I think you forget about all that because they look so well dressed up and they're like smiling. And it's like they could be on a 16-hour, wake up, they've been in makeup and stuff like that. And so I think that probably plays a big role into it, but you don't think about that. And then I think, they were saying on there that you don't, like, they were constantly having to think, well, does this person actually want to be with Gabby? Or does this person want to be with Rachel? Where in the past it's like, you're the only game in town. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's something about having to that
oh yeah.
shifts the power a
Hmm.
little differently because
Hmm.
it's like normally the contestants either have to like choose the lead or go home.
Right. Yep.
And I do think that there's ways that they've gotten to have like more choice,
Hmm.
the contestants have. Um and there's like more possibility for them. And I do think it creates like a different power balance. And if you're both Rachel and Gabby, I think you go in sort of expecting that there is this sense that when you're the lead, like you aren't the one that gets rejected, you do
Yep.
the rejecting and like all this stuff. And that's not been the case this season.
Well, and it should be like Rachel or Gabby or anyone who's been the primary or the lead before has hedged their bets to what they say to people, right? Because they didn't want to make their decision early. But now that there's two bachelorettes, it's like the guys, it's like, well, why are you need to declare your love for me? And it's like, well, there was no repercussions in the past when you came on strong and said you're the person right now. It's like, well, maybe I like one more than the other and I just haven't decided yet. And so
It will be interesting because I do think that in some ways the relationships feel like they're developing a little bit slower.
mhm,
Um, and I think part of that is there's just a lot of guys.
yeah.
And then I think what you were just talking about does create something where like you can't kind of just jump in quite the same
Mhm,
way without there being maybe a repercussion. So you're like trying to feel out
mhm.
multiple relationships. And then, because like I had this moment where Rachel was with Tino, and you could tell that they're both like, ooh, this feels
Mhm,
like so
mhm,
early.
mhm.
But like I think on past episodes, like that's just like the rules of the game.
Yeah.
And like 4 episodes in, it's not that weird for you to be on a one-on-one and maybe for there to be some like declarations or strong feelings. And it sort of seemed like they were like, ooh, because like what did he say? He was like, is it too early for us to be like
Yeah.
talking about kids or something? And I was like, okay, so I know Kim's a huge fan of Tino.
Mhm.
Um, I think he's like a normal
You
human,
said he was boring.
but I think he's boring. And like I do. I don't I guess like I don't find him quite as attractive as I think everybody else does. But like I just like think he's kind of boring. I actually think he's a great fit for Rachel and she's like clearly into him. Sometimes I'm like just like
You're with Gabby. She's just more simple. She's
I think Gabby, like all this rough around the edges talk. I think Gabby's hilarious.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I think she's like working through things, but like I would love to be friends with Gabby, in a way. Like it's not like there's nothing wrong with Rachel in terms of like I think she's a really nice human. And you can see some of her personality coming out, but I don't know, but Tino is kind of the same way. Like, I just don't find him that interesting. I think he's charming and he's nice and he hasn't messed up at all. But like, I also don't think there's anything interesting about
Yeah, he
him.
hasn't said much that makes me be like, oh, hey, this is really, yeah.
But then, like, it's funny because I feel like she's like so ready to dive in with him. And then, like, I mean, he seems like he's mostly on board, but then he says things like, oh, is it too early to be talking about kids? And I'm like, ooh, I think she's like would accept a proposal right now.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think if they were in real life and it wasn't the Bachelorette, she would be like leaving wedding like the catalogs like around their apartment, and he would be like, ignoring them, like putting them away. I did think it was funny when she said these guys make me feel less chosen than Clayton, and all of America was like, really? Really, Rachel? Do you not remember the stairs?
But does he make you feel the most less chosen? Like,
yeah, I felt like that was probably one of the most ridiculous things anyone's ever said on that show. Like, if they could have just flashed back to her on the stairs, like
there's her cries echoing.
And then the second day where he like was like, no, I do want you guys. And then he was like, actually, I've kind of rethought this. And
what it sort of made me realize though is like there's like, oh my gosh, like how much do we not see?
Yeah.
Right? Because if she like either she's just emotional and hasn't slept in like 16 hours or like, it's something here, or like Clayton was way better to them when we didn't see it,
I think Clayton had a way of being nothing that seemed like he was really choosing you. Like, I think he was neither like mean, like he just was smiley, he never said much. And so it was this like passive, like he loves me the most, where it was like, well, he's just not being a dick.
Well, I think that there's this line that I feel is really common that I find kind of interesting, where contestants will say to the leads, especially in the earlier episodes, and we heard it on this season, but you've heard it on other seasons too, where it's sort of like, well, they just make me feel so comfortable. Like, I feel so comfortable, or I feel like it's just the two of us, kind of a thing. And I'm sure that there are probably personalities and people that just have that ability to do that more. Like, for example, Peter did not do that well.
No, he did not.
Nope. But like it does seem like a lot of the leads have whatever that is. Because you meet people in everyday life where there are just some people that like make you feel really like paid attention to and valued, And so it wouldn't surprise me if people that find themselves in that position are oftentimes people that also
good at those types of things. I don't think Gabby has that, which is one of the reasons I like her. But she was making fun of herself on the podcast I listened to, because they were talking about how she's like, yeah, wow, like how she just says yeah after everything, and she's like, that's so crazy. That's crazy. So
she's a hoot. She's a hoot.
Well, she gets full hoot rating from Danielle.
She gets 2 hoots.
2 hoots.
2 hoots from Danielle. So, Bill, do you have a wild card for us?
Well, I did. We just thought about it like 4 minutes before we started the show.
That's okay.
So we did see Gabby's mom has responded, or someone they think is Gabby's mom. So I went back and read this, and somebody's who said they were Gabby's mom posted on social media and commented on a post that Gabby made about it, and basically said she will not be on the show. She is not going to hurt Gabby. She doesn't like seeing Gabby hurt. But she said she's very happy she's on this journey. She even referenced the Matt James episode where they brought his father on.
Ooh, yeah.
And there was a lot of debate on like, did this help? Did this hurt? Did we really need to be privy to this? And so I don't have a lot to talk about other than, you know, I've talked about one in the past, that people really need to think about when they get married. You don't just marry the person, you marry their family, and definitely the family that's involved and potentially the family that's not involved at that point. And then what role they are going to play if Gabby decides to try to mend fences with their mom. And so one of the guys, and I can't remember who it was, talked about how they didn't have a great relationship with their family, right?
Yeah, well, I think Jason kind of,
Yeah.
because I think they bonded over that, and it seems like, because who was the date with? Was it with Eric?
Yes.
Who you
Eric.
could tell that, yes, that Gabby felt some insecurities that like he
couldn't.
he didn't.
Yeah,
Well,
she walked off and he was like, wow, yeah. And then she got
yeah.
drunk and made out with him.
You know, it was interesting though, because like I didn't feel like he wasn't responding empathetically or anything like that, but she must have like, or if it there's just like talking about it made her feel insecure. So like I think she feels more comfortable being with somebody that has similar experiences to her, which could be really helpful. But I could also see going into a relationship where both of you are working through trauma from your childhood.
Yeah.
That could also be a barrier, right? You know?
Yeah. Well, and I don't think he was being unempathetic. I think he just had no roadmap for how to deal with that. And his way of being put in a situation, I think we all have different ways that when we get put in a situation, we don't know what to do. You know,
He responded like Gabby. He said, yeah, wow.
Yeah, he just kind of like, yeah. Wow. And then I think at one point he's like, I don't really know how to respond to this because I don't have any point for it, which I'm sure made her feel very insecure because,
right.
you know, so yeah, I think the Gabby's mom thing is going to take, you know, it's going to keep coming up. And I think from a family system standpoint, the bigger issue is that when you have that stuff in your family, you learn how to be a family by what your family taught you. And so then when you start your kind of branch of the family tree, those things you start out with that kind of map, and people can change and they can learn new ways of doing things, but they always start with that baseline, which going back to the counseling thing is probably a good for them going into counseling, because that's one of the good things that counselors do is they say, why are you doing this? What is it serving? Is there a different way that you could do it? And, you know, they rarely tell you what to do, but they point out the things you don't see because they're ingrained in you. So
yeah.
I think about it like, so like piano, I've been taking piano for a while, and there's things I do now that I don't even pay attention to. And my piano teacher will be like, why is your finger like that? And it's like, it's always been that way. And she's like, oh, that's really bad. You need to change that. And it's kind of like counseling's kind of like that, right? Like when your spouse says something to you and you snap back at him, it's like, well, why are you snapping back at him? It's like, well,
that's how parents talk to each other, right?
Yep, right, well, exactly, yeah. Or when someone makes you feel wrong, you try to prove that you're right. And it's like, well, do you have to? Maybe they're just kidding around. Maybe they're not trying to make you feel bad. And so, yeah. That's all I got. So University of Northern Iowa Counseling Program. You can learn more.
Absolutely.
Start your application online today.
I like it. So lessons learned. What sort of things did we learn today?
You can love your dog and still be an asswipe.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. But your dog's still probably great.
Well, because I think people use that as a litmus test sometimes. You know, like, oh, how does this person respond to my pet? Or are they like pets? You know, like, and what this shows you is this might help you weed someone out. Oh, they're terrible. They're jerks with my pet. For sure, they're gone. Right. But what it also tells you is they could still be good to your pet and be a jerk to you.
Yes. Yep.
So, I agree. I don't know.
Oh, you really riffed off my lesson. Good job. That was good.
Yeah.
Nice.
I don't know. I think that we learned that therapy is good, but don't fetishize it. I can't say that word, but I keep saying that word.
Yeah. Yeah. Therapy is a lot of work. It's good, but it's a lot of work.
It is. Well, so I think we should conclude this episode with one more shout out to you and I's counseling program.
No, we've got our city.
Oh, do you have a city?
Of course I do. I always make sure I pick
a city.
Victor, Colorado. So I know that Gabby was a Denver Broncos cheerleader for a while, or dance team member. So I picked a place in Colorado that has listened to us, Victor, Colorado. It is in Teller County in the south of Colorado. It was an old mining town. In 1899, it was burned down by a fire. The average high in, what month are we in? August, is right at about 70 degrees. So it's up in the mountains. It's got about 397 people in it.
Go Victor.
Yeah. So trying to see if there's anything else. In the city, the population was spread out between 17% under 19, 4.8 between 20 to 24, 20.6 between 25 to 44, 47.8, 45 to 64. So they are an aging population, and about 11% 65 and older. Household income, $31,000.
I bet you can find affordable housing in Victor.
Yeah. So several mines there. That's it.
Thanks, Victor. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, Victor.
Awesome. Well, have a good week, and we'll be back next time.
Yes, and next week it is going to be Kim and Danielle, because I know all of our listeners actually have memorized the rotation, but I will be in the mountains somewhere, and so Danielle is covering for me. So you get double Danielle.
Double Danielle. It will be fun.
All right.
Peace out.
You have been listening to Bachelordemia
with your hosts, Danielle Dick McGee,
Kim Hanna,
and Bill Hennig.
All thoughts and opinions expressed on the show are solely those of the person who spoke them.
If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe to the show, leaving a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to your podcast.
Also, please share with your family, friends, colleagues, and other ardent Bachelor fans.
If you have comments or questions you would like us to address on the show, you can email us at bachelordemia@gmail.com.
Or on the Twitter with the handle @Bachelordemia.
Thanks for listening.